Hey everybody, Mr. Parks here. Today I want to talk about, in this screencast, the gentleman that you see on the screen. His name is Alasdair MacIntyre, and he is a philosopher out of Notre Dame. He is alive, and he has really kind of helped, at least me personally, with the idea of what a tradition is. He's helped me understand what perhaps the Christian tradition is, what the American tradition is, or what, even as somebody who's recently gotten married, what my own traditions are with my family. To talk about this, I want to talk about what a tradition is, and you can see the definition that we're going to be using here on the left side of the screen. So MacIntyre argues that a tradition has basically three components. The first component is that it is historically extended. Now, what does he mean by this? He means essentially that a tradition doesn't begin with you and it doesn't begin with me. The Christian tradition did not begin necessarily in the first century. It has its roots way back into Judaism. The American tradition did not necessarily begin in 1776, but rather it has its roots that go back into history. Now, another way to look at this is you and I probably are not going to come up with our own tradition, that we have been so influenced by people who have come before us. Okay, so the first component here is that a tradition is historically extended. The next thing is a tradition is socially embodied. Now, what does he mean here? Essentially, you cannot do a tradition by yourself. Okay, the Christian tradition is not something that is done by you. American tradition is not something that is done just by the president, perhaps. In order for a tradition to be a tradition, according to MacIntyre, it has to be socially embodied. It is something that is done by a number of people. This social embodiment, again, extends over history. It goes back into time. But it is something that is done in community. It is something that is done with people. And then the third thing is it's an argument. Okay, I'm going to unpack this a little bit further, but it's an argument. It's an argument about God, perhaps. It's an argument about politics. It's an argument about life. So you guys can see that there are perhaps many traditions in our world today, and yet they all probably have these three components. They go back, they stretch back into time, they are embodied by a number of people, and they are arguments about given things. So here is the definition that comes from a great book called After Virtue, which was published in 1984, before you were born. And this is one of the pinnacle books by Alasdair MacIntyre. But listen to how he says this. He says, a living tradition is an historically extended, socially embodied argument. An argument precisely, in part, about the good which constitutes that tradition. Okay? Within a tradition, the pursuit of good extends through generations. Again, it's historically extended, sometimes through many generations. Hence, the individual search for his or her good is generally and characteristically conducted within a context defined by those traditions which the individual's life is a part. Okay, what did that just say? Essentially, your identity is defined by the context of the traditions that you find yourself a part of. Okay, my identity as a Christian, my identity as Mr. Parks is very much defined by the context of the traditions that have defined or shaped my life. Okay, so first things first, what is a tradition? Well, it is a historically extended, socially embodied argument. This slide is going to give you a little bit of context of what he means by that, so you may want to pause it and read over that a couple more times. But the next thing is I want to define one more time a little scheme of how he defines a tradition. What makes up a tradition? Well, the first thing is at the bedrock of any tradition is its narrative, is its story. Okay? If you need to, think about American politics here. If you know the Bible well, you can think of the narrative of the Bible. Okay, the story is the foundation of any tradition. Its core narrative, its core story. Now notice all of these are going to be shaped by this one narrative. This is the foundation. So the narratives are going to shape the practices. Okay, the narratives are going to shape the practices. And then the practices are going to shape what one believes. Okay, if you're Episcopalian, if you're Catholic, this might make sense to you. In the Episcopal Church, what we practice, the way in which we pray, shapes what we believe. Okay, and oftentimes in American life, we think that what you believe shapes what you practice. Well, according to MacIntyre, what you practice shapes what you believe. Okay? If I, every Saturday morning, go to a Habitat for Humanity project and I practice building houses for people who cannot afford a house, I may eventually, according to MacIntyre, believe that these people need houses. Okay? According to MacIntyre, it's not that I believe at first and then just want to go build houses. It's no. By participating in these practices, shape my beliefs. The next things, again, narrative shapes practice, practice shapes belief, belief shapes value. Okay? By going and building houses shapes what I believe about these people, what I believe about the good of building houses. And therefore, I'm going to value certain things. I'm going to value all people. I'm going to value a building over my head. I'm going to value my own shelter, but I'm also going to value the need of that for other people. So narrative shapes practice, practice shapes belief, belief shapes value, and finally, values shape convictions. Okay? Therefore, we act out of these traditions. That's what this arrow is doing over here. We act out of our convictions. But our convictions are shaped by what we value. What we value is shaped by our beliefs. Our beliefs are shaped by our practices. And at the foundation, again, are the narratives. What is the main narrative that shapes this tradition? Okay? The Christians have a narrative. Most notably seen in the Bible, most notably seen in Jesus. These narratives shape certain practices. Again, let's use Habitat for Humanity. Because my narrative says that it is blessed, that the poor are blessed, the people who are hungry, the people who don't have shelter, they are the ones that are blessed. Well, I practice that by blessing those people. By practicing that, I turn to believe that they really are blessed. I value them as people. I have certain convictions that shape my actions. Okay, so a quick review. A tradition is a historically extended, socially embodied argument. It is an argument precisely about the good which constitutes that tradition. And at the foundation of a tradition is its narrative. The narrative shapes its practices. The practice shapes its beliefs. The beliefs shapes its values, and its values shape the convictions. And finally, we act out of these convictions which go up and they reinterpret the narrative.